Welcome back to Analysis, where we're looking at the presidential election in Egypt, where Field Marshal Abdel Fattah el-Sisi is expected to be the easy victor. In neighboring Libya, a renegade army general was recently accused of planning a coup, and fighters allied to him attacked the parliamentary building in Tripoli. General Khalifa Haftar denies initiating a coup, but he has called for a suspension of parliament and accused Islamists of taking control of the country. In a recent interview, he even expressed admiration for General Sisi and said he intends to crush the Libyan Muslim Brotherhood, mirroring what Sisi has done in Egypt. In this half of the show, we ask what the election means for Egypt on the international stage, especially in its relations with neighbours, Libya and Israel, and then the Gulf countries and the West. We've been joined now in the studio by Dr. Barbara Zollner, a lecturer in Islamic Studies at Birkbeck College, part of the University of London. Welcome to Analysis, Dr. Zollner. Let me ask you, in fact, what do you think the relations with Libya will be now? Are they going to be very close?
It's still early days, and I think the Libyan situation is still very complex one, or it is a very complex one. Of course, we have reports since last Friday about escalating crisis in Libya. And if you only have a cursory reading of the newspapers of the last few days, particularly where there are references made to also General Haftar, then you clearly see that there is an impact of a Sisi probably potentially winning the elections, insofar as at least the fraction of Haftar celebrates Sisi as the way forward, and Haftar is celebrated as the Libyan Sisi. So there might be implications there. However, I would be still very, very careful in making grand judgments there, insofar as we have in the National Council, of course, the National Council in Libya is supported by the Muslim Brotherhood, and as such, maybe a crisis can be averted, and General Haftar is not necessarily supported, or is not supported by the National Council. It depends a little bit on the stand of the president there at the moment.
But I mean, President Sisi, let's call him that, future President Sisi, has so many problems domestically and with the economy. Surely he wouldn't involve himself in some kind of cross-border operations at this stage.
No, at this stage, I don't think they. Sisi also made no comments about the Libyan affair or about the Libyan situation. In the past, there were always close relationship between Egypt and Libya, and we can assume that maybe in the long term that there is that Sisi envisages something like that in future again. But at the moment, Sisi, as the future president of Egypt, is much too busy with internal affairs, and particularly to keep the economy going, and also to suppress the opposition, particularly the one coming from the Muslim Brotherhood. So yes, I think that the parallels are drawn rather on the Libyan side rather than on the Egyptian side.
But Saba, what about Israel? I mean, they're pretty pleased with Sisi coming to power, aren't they? I mean, they certainly didn't like the Muslim Brotherhood.
Oh, absolutely. As far as the situation in Egypt, it's totally in favor of Israel on a variety of levels. First of all, Egypt has now gone out of the regional effect. Egypt has become as if it's a small state, although it's the major state, it's the more important one. When the coup d'etat took place, Egypt has gone out completely. It has no further relationship with the neighbors. It's taking because it's involved in its own domestic problems. The second thing is that Egypt has now lashing left, right, and center, accusing everybody of conspiring against them. So the Libyans are conspiring through the Brotherhood. The Palestinians are conspiring against them through Hamas. The Qataris are conspiring against them. The Sudanis, etc. So Egypt has a position. Basically, is that they they have no further effect on the neighbors because they have their own problems. And secondly, they are accusing all the neighbors of being anti-Egypt or anti-system in Egypt.
So this rather sort of simplistic idea that people have in the West, the media and politicians, that Egypt is the leader of the Arab world, that is no longer true.
It is. It's certainly it's up and down, but Egypt, because it's of its bulk, it's the biggest Arab country, it's the most influential one. It has a leadership, a traditional leadership. It is neighboring to Israel. It had a lot of problems with Israel and Sinai and Gaza. So it was perceived by everybody as that. But for the last couple of years, or at least since the coup d'etat, Egypt has gone completely out of the equation. It's playing no role in any issue. It is still begging countries to be friendly with. When it used to be able to influence, it used to be able to lead, it used to be able to play a role. Now nobody takes notice of what Egypt wants or doesn't. And indeed, Egypt at the moment is not saying anything on any issue other than blocking the Palestinians and closing the Gaza passages and calling Hamas as the terrorist organization, which is 100% pro-Israel stance. So Egypt has lost on variety of levels throughout the region.
Mohammed Sudan, I mean, do you think Sisi can sort of change things in this way and get back to, he says Nasser is his hero, one of his heroes. Nasser was the leader of the Arab world. Can Sisi get back somehow to that?
I don't think so. I think the personality of Sisi is very weak. He has no any population in Egypt right now. Only the people who belong to Mubarak's era are loving Sisi because they thought that he's going to bring back the era of Mubarak, corruption, all this stuff back to Egypt. And also the people who hate the Muslim Brotherhood and also they support Sisi. But now we have a very, very blind picture. And Sisi talk about Libya and talk about the terrorists, and he's going to fight the terrorists even if they reach to Algeria. Then he doesn't respect the neighbors. He doesn't, and General Haftar announced that he wants to meet Sisi because they have the same strategy, the same military coup, and then they want to go together, be friends against legitimacy. And then I think that Sisi every day he's losing. And especially after he be the future president, and then with no agenda, no expert, nothing, he will lose more and more and more. There is no stability in the country. There is no security and safety. All the investors, either local or foreigner, smuggled from the country, and they took all their money. And the Gulf will never add or give loans to Sisi for all the life.
Barbara, may I come back to you on the question of the Brotherhood throughout the region? I mean, Tunisia is another area where the Muslim Brotherhood or the Ennahda party is under some sort of potential threat, isn't it?
I wouldn't claim to be an expert on Tunisia, so I kind of, I'm almost, in this case, happy to pass on the parcel. But what becomes clear in Tunisia is that it is actually one of the few examples of a Muslim Brotherhood success story. It is, and particularly a success story because of the leadership of Rashid al-Ghannouchi, and because Rashid al-Ghannouchi was able to reach out to the various stakeholders in Tunisia, and what he basically managed to do is what he managed was to call for a politics of moderation, which is very important in a democratization process. This is something the Brotherhood in Egypt did not necessarily manage in the course of the time when Morsi was in power. He did not manage to bring all the really important players together and to really keep the transition process going. But in Tunisia, that definitely can be attributed to Rashid al-Ghannouchi.
And what about in Egypt itself? What future do you see for the Muslim Brotherhood over the next few years? Can they re-emerge as they have done in the past?
Well, Sisi already declared the Muslim Brotherhood dead, or that the Muslim Brotherhood has no future in Egypt. I think he really ignores a number of very important factors, whether it is the Muslim Brotherhood's ability to mobilize people still today, which is connected to its organizational structure. So even though almost all of the leadership now is in prison, nevertheless, it really still has a grassroots hold, and is able to, or many young people particularly are now willing also to mobilize in favor of the Muslim Brotherhood. So the Muslim Brotherhood is by no means dead. However, what the future holds depends a little bit on whether the reformist part of the Muslim Brotherhood, which has been ostracized and marginalized during the period of Morsi, is able to kind of reconstitute itself and revive the Muslim Brotherhood from within. The more conservative leadership, as it was previously led by the Guidance Council, whether it's Morsi, whether it's Mohammed Ghoslan, Biltaji, Khairat al-Shatar, etc., they are most likely not anywhere able to shape the future of the Muslim Brotherhood in the nearer future. Because they're in prison, or they are not in Egypt, or because they also left the touch with the grassroots.
I think to try and understand this, although this is not in support of the Brotherhood, but I think the Brotherhood as a political movement in Egypt, it is the strongest movement with a grassroots. When you compare it with all the other political movements, like the Nasserist, like the leftist, the communist, all of them, those are elitists. They can sit down and write books and talk theories about all sorts of things. Brotherhood were the people who were dealing with the ordinary people. They teach women how to sew, and boys how to learn computers. They teach English in schools and what have you. They were close to the people, so people associated with them, in addition to the element of they are all being Muslims.
Can they continue doing that now, or is that all?
They will continue to do that, because this one is not a political movement. They have all the mosques. The government will try and control the mosques. Now they are making the sermons have to be vetted, etc., etc. But you cannot stop people from gathering in the mosque and learning English, or learning how to write, or computer, or sewing, or medical services, or lawyers. So they will continue to have this grassroots movement. And that is the closeness of the Brotherhood to the public in Egypt, as opposed to other countries, compared to the closeness of the other political movements in Egypt. None of them. The others, during Nasser time, there was a Nasserist movement, because the state and Nasser and everything was there. But thereafter, it began to be a political movement without the charisma of Nasser, but they were still, eventually they became the elitist movement, which talks politics and economics, which is above the head of the ordinary person. While the Brotherhood continued to deal with the people on that level, because they don't have a lot to preach other than you can pray and read the Quran and all this, which is part of the culture of the person.
Mohammed, what about Hamas and Israel? I mean, is Hamas now... They've made a unity agreement with Fatah, haven't they? I mean, so is Hamas going to sort of revive a little bit internationally, do you think, even though the passages from Gaza, etc., all that has been blocked?
I'm really wondering, because Sisi and his foundation announced that Hamas is a terrorism movement, and they sat down together and they announced that to solve the problem with the Fatah and Hamas, and they were part for solving or making this agreement between both Hamas and the Fatah, and they need that. They cannot block the relationship between Egypt administration and Hamas, because it's very, very important. They are our neighbors. There are cross in Rafah between Egypt and Hamas and Gaza, and then it's very, very important. Anyway, I think that they cannot touch Hamas by different things. Yes, we know that now the new administration of Sisi is belong to Israel more and more and more than all the Palestinian people. And that will give a very bad repetition for Egypt, because now our enemy is the Palestinian more than the Israeli, and we consider, Sisi and his people consider Israel as a neighbor we have to respect, and Hamas is an enemy and we have to block them or something. And this is not acceptable for the Egyptian people, not acceptable for all the Arab people.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Barbara, just the last issue. We haven't got very much time left, unfortunately. Relations with the West, with the United States in particular. Do you see any problem that Sisi is going to have with the United States, or is it business as usual like it was under Mubarak?
The relations with the US are a little bit sour ever since the last year coup. There was initially the question of whether the US can support Sisi. I think by now the US, particularly the pragmatic policymakers, are willing to return to an open relationship with Sisi, knowing fully well that they cannot maintain its influence in the region without Egypt as still a joy. I agree, they lost a lot of influence in the region, but also they need to keep Saudi Arabia happy to a major extent, and Saudi Arabia is a funder of Sisi and Sisi's regime. Hence, there is something like a regional interest there for Washington to maintain at least relative good relations with Saudi Arabia as well as Egypt, although there are moments of critique there as well.
Thank you very much for that. I'm afraid we've come out of time. It's the end now of this episode of Analysis. I'd like to thank my guests and, of course, you at home for watching. Please tune in again for future discussions. Don't forget that you can keep up with the discussion by following us on Twitter at the address below on your screen, or by following Islam Channel Current Affairs on Facebook. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.